We've already done the first one out of the 5 fashion scarves. It was the one that was done with the arrows, which had the ruffle. And it turned out really, really nice. I used arrows. You can use any yarn you like, but as long as I have arrows available, I will use it. So this time we're going to do the fuzzy rib scarf. The original one was done with a soft fuzzy yarn many years ago. I don't know which one it was, but it's definitely been deleted. However, I did find another one called Imperial. It's super soft, super fuzzy, worsted weight. I used a size 10 needle with it, so it works out really, really well. I have one I made here, and as you can see, it turned out really, really nice. Super soft, super flexible. And if you don't see enough fuzz because the one you use doesn't show a lot of fuzz, if you get a small baby brush, because they have super fine hairs, just go like this and brush it with that baby brush, and you'll be surprised how much of the fuzz will come up to the top. Some will stay on the bottom, but all the ones that are caught intertwined inside the stitches will all pop up. And it's a great way to get your scarves to really get fluffy. Now there are other yarns out there. You could use Ophelia, which is a lightweight yarn, and it is fuzzy. You could add it to the Encore, and that would give you the same weight that works on a tin. And then same with this one, you'd have to brush it to get the fibers to pop out, because otherwise they do get knitted into your design. Another one you can do, it doesn't have to be Encore, it could be Red Heart, it could be Caron, it could be Patons, whichever you want. If you can find fun fur and carry fun fur with a yarn, you could get roughly the same texture. Another one you could use, totally different texture, is Pipsqueak by Burnett. As you can see, it's not fuzz, but it's super soft and it's got loops all over it, so it would make it super, super fuzzy also. So that's another version. You can make it with just about any yarn you want. It does not have to even be fuzzy. You can make it just plain, but you'll see the rib when you do, if you don't do it with fuzzy yarn. So let me get set up with the yarn that I'm going to make this with, and we'll proceed. Now, I'm not going to make this through completion because I already did one, but I'll show you how to start, how to make it, and how to bind off, because it's better to bind off in rib. It gives your top a little bit more stretch than if you do just a straight bind off knit waist. I grabbed me a ball of Encore, it's plain white. I'm going to go ahead and use the 10 needles, which will make it very loose. That also helps with it. When you use a 10 needle, it makes your stitches very big, which also makes it extra bouncy and soft. So let's start cast on 36. Not sure if I'll do 36. Well, I say that every time, but we'll see how many. Like I said, I'm not making the whole scarf, but I'm going to show the 3 parts to it: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then you just fill the rest in with your knits and your purls, because this is all done with knit 2, purl 2. So you would knit 2 stitches, bring the yarn to the front, purl 2 stitches, take the yarn to the back, knit 2 stitches, and just keep repeating it all the way across. And after you've got a couple of rows, you can tell which are knit stitches and which are purl stitches, which is really, really great, because you'll know where you are if you set your work down. There's no row counting. You just knit it till you get your desired length, or till you run out of yarn, whichever comes first. Let's see, we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. There's 24. That's good enough. We'll just do 24. Let me cut off the extra tail, because it has to be repeats of 4, because 2 knits and 2 purls equal 4 stitches. So once you get your cast on done, first row, here they're saying 1 and 1. You can do it that way also. You can do a knit 1, purl 1, or you can do it like I did. I prefer this, a knit 2, purl 2. It seems to lay flatter with a knit 2, purl 2, but you can do a knit 1, purl 1. Either way works. So I'm going to add to the pattern, or knit 2, purl 2, and repeat across. Both ways work, both ways are fine. It's just whichever you're more comfortable with. So let's go ahead and do the knit 2, purl 2. So you knit 2, Bring your yarn to the front, and you work through the front loop, yarn over, then you push it back. Bring the yarn to the front, yarn over, push it to the back, and that is your purl. Bring your yarn to the back and do 2 knits. Put your yarn and needle in back, yarn over, and bring it to the front. And then when we purl, we bring the needle to the front, yarn over, take it to the back. Needle in the front, yarn over to the back. Then when you purl, needle to the back, and you bring it to the front. And you just keep working across. Take your time. There's no hurry. Get the feel of your needles. Get the feel of your yarn. If I had done this in fuzzy, it'd be just as easy. It's just for showing purposes. Fuzzy's a little bit harder to show because you can't see the needles because they're kind of hidden behind the fuzz. But this scarf looks just as good plain, or with a sparkly yarn, or with a yarn that has thick and thin. It's entirely up to you which yarn you want to use. The softer the better, because you're going to be wearing it around your neck and you like to have it nice and comfy. Okay, now I have 2 stitches left. They're both purl. 1, 2. Okay, so that would be the end of my knit 2, purl 2. Right now you really can't see the knits and the purls too well, but they're there. Okay, row 2. Oh, here it is. I'm already saying that. Or knit 2, purl 2 across. Then repeat row 1 to desired length, leaving at least 4 feet, not 4 inches, 4 feet of yarn to bind off with. Okay, so I guess I don't need to put this here because I already put it there. All right, so let's go on to next row. I'm going to knit 2. Bring the yarn in the front, purl 2. Yarn to the back, knit 2. Yarn to the front, purl 2. Yarn to the back, knit 2. Yarn to the front, purl 2. Yarn to the back, knit 2, yarn to the front, purl 2. It's very monotonous because there's no change throughout the whole thing. You just keep redoing the same thing over and over again. That's why I kind of like doing the 2 by 2 instead of 1 by 1. When you do 1 by 1, you constantly are moving the yarn from the front of the needle to the back. See, I made a mistake somewhere. Let's see, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Oh, right there, I only did 1 purl, but I did 2 knits. You can tell the purl because it's got the bump, where these 2 don't have bumps. So I'm going to tink, put the needle in the stitch below, and then pull your yarn out. Put the needle in the stitch below, pull your yarn out. Okay, so I need to do another purl, and then 2 knits, and bring the yarn to the front and do 2 purls. Turn your work and repeat. Now you can start seeing it a little bit. See how a couple of these stitches here don't have a bump, they're just kind of smooth with little V's underneath? Those are knit stitches when you're on this side. And the 2 with the bumps are purl stitches when you're on this side. But now, if you, okay, I'm going to put my finger right where that purl stitch is. If I turn it over, it's a knit stitch on the other side. So your knits are purls when you turn your needle around. Just make sure you knit on the knits and purl on the purls. So if I sat this down, say to answer the phone, and I didn't really pay any attention to exactly what stitch I was on. Say I set it down at this point. The phone rang. Okay, I set it down. I walked away. Now I'm coming back. I have to decide where I'm at. I could count 2 knits, 2 purls, 1 knit. I could count it that way. Or I can look and see, well, there's 2 knit stitches here. See how nice and smooth it is? And you got 2 bumps here, so those are my 2 purl stitches. But I only have 1 knit stitch here, and there's a knit stitch. See how smooth it is? And then you got your 2 purls, so you know this stitch is going to be a knit to match this knit. Another clue is the yarn's in the back. So if the yarn's in the back, most likely you're working on a knit stitch. If when you set it down and the yarn was in front of your work, most likely you were working on a purl stitch. So that's another clue to see where you're at. And you keep going. And then you knit. Then you purl. And you knit. What I'm going to do after I finish this row, I'm going to pause and I'm going to knit up several rows, or rib up several rows, so you can see where I'm at. Like I said, this is just going to be a sampler. It's only going to be 2, maybe 4 inches long. It won't be the full length of an actual scarf. But I wanted to show you how to bind off and rib, which is more important. And then I'll do another quickie little one in a knit 1 purl 1, so you can see the difference between what a knit 1 purl 1 looks like and a knit 2 purl 2 looks like. Okay, give me a couple of minutes so I can get a few more rows, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just about finished with this roll. I think there's enough here to show you what it looks like. Let me go ahead and finish this roll. Bring the yarn to the back because the next 2 are knit. Also, when you look at them, the knit ones are nice V's, and the purls are on the inside there, and they don't look like V's. So that's another way to know where you're at if you happen to put your work down. Let me get these last 2. Now you see what it looks like on this side. If I turn it over, it looks exactly the same, because the ones that are knits on this side are purls on this side, and those that are purls on this side are knits on this side. And they automatically like to scrunch together. That's just the nature of a knit purl. That's how why they call them rib, because you can see how they'll stretch out like a rib stitch or a piece of elastic. So they usually use this on the bottom of a jacket or a cuff, because that way when you put it on, it'll shrink up next to your arm and keep your wrist really warm. All right, let's go ahead and do our bind off. Like I said, this is a bind off. Move this out of the way. In rib. So if you see something says bind off in rib, you know what it means. So whatever the stitch is, that's what you're going to do. This is a knit. The next one's a knit. So we'll bind that one off. Now the next one's a purl. So we bring the yarn in front and purl it. Now I can't bind it off with this yarn in the front. I've never been able to, so I just set the yarn to the back temporarily while I bind it off. Then I bring the yarn back to the front because I got that second purl stitch. Now this time when I take it to the back, I'll leave it back there because the next 2 stitches are knit. Now some ladies are very lucky. They can actually leave the yarn in front when they bind off and purl. That's great. But for me, I've just never quite been able to make it do it as comfortably. So I just take the extra second, temporarily set the yarn in back so I can see my stitch. Now what I'll do is at the very end, the last 4 or 6 stitches, oh, this is a knit. See, that's knit. I will do them in just straight knit bind off, and you'll see the difference between the bind off in rib and the bind off in just plain knit. Okay, there's 2. Now the next 2 are purl, so I have to bring the yarn to the front to do my purl bind off. There's still 1 more left, so I'm going to bind it off in purl. Now the next one is knit, and my yarn is already in the back. And I'll do 2 more in purl, and then I'll finish the rest off in basic bind off and you'll see a difference and you'll be able to feel a difference. Okay, so there, those two. Now these, like I said, I'm going to bind off the rest and just plain standard knit bind off, where every stitch is knitted and you bind off all knit stitches. You'll be able to see the difference and feel the difference, and the finished product in binding off in all knit, it doesn't look as clean as if you bind it off in rib. 2 more stitches. And then you bring up your tail. Cut it. And bring the tail through the loop. And pull it. And there you go. Now it's finished off. Okay. So now you can see the difference in the bind off. You can see right off the bat the difference. So when you bind off in rib, it has kind of a ribby look and it's nice and stretchy. And it will reasonably go back to its original shape. When you bind off in knit, it's just straight across. There's some stretch to it, but it won't shrink back in as well. As you can see, it doesn't have as nice of a finished look, and I had to force it back because it wants to stay that way. So always try to remember when it says bind off in rib, these stitches you knit as you bind off, those you purl as you bind off, these you knit. Okay, so now I'm going to show another one. I'm going to show the same thing, but this time I'm going to show it in knit one, purl one. It's the same process. It has a little different look, so I like to show you both. That way you have the chance to make the decision whether you want to do a 1x1 rib or a 2x2 rib. I think I'll change that "or" on that page to something bright like red, so it's noticeable. Now this one needs to be in repeats of 2, because knit 1, purl 1 is 2, but knit 2, purl 2 is 4. 2, 4. Well, let me do a little bit more. That's not enough. Let me go over here, because that last one I think I had 24. And it gave us a nice sample to look at. See, this is the side that was bound off in rib, and that's the side that was bound off in just plain knit. And when you count it, it'd be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and the 2 on the end makes 24. Now when you count this, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, how many do I have now? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. I'm only going to get 20, but I'm going to have to do this one this way because I don't have enough yarn to do the slingshot. So I just wrap it around this finger, yarn over, and then flip it back. Okay, now let's do our knit 1, purl 1. Knit the first one, bring the yarn to the front, purl the second one. Take the yarn to the back, knit the first one, take the yarn to the front, purl the second one. Knit, purl. As you can see, there's a lot more maneuvering of the yarn on a knit 1, purl 1 than there is with a knit 2, purl 2. And same with a knit 3, purl 3. That's also another design you can do. And there's a variety of them. You can do a knit 6, purl 3, and that way you have a wider rib on the front and less rib being stretched open. But that's a different pattern. But you just have to keep doing this. Right now you really can't see it because this is just the first row. Once you get about 5, 6, 7 rows, you can really start seeing it. one more, and it's a pearl. Okay, so row 1 is now done. So when I turn my work, you can still see it. See, there's a pearl. See, there's a smooth spot right there. That's a knit. The bump makes it a pearl, so that's a knit, pearl, knit. You can see it as you go across. Knit, pearl, knit, pearl. And when you bind off, you do the exact same thing. However, you bind off in a 1x1 instead of a 2x2. When we get to an inch or two done on this, I'll show you how to bind off a 1x1. But you can see how every single stitch I have to move the yarn. That's, to me, what's annoying about a 1x1. There's a lot of yarn movement. 2x2, at least I only have to move it half the amount of time. Feels more like I'm getting somewhere. Four more, and then I'll have 2 rows done. And I might be able to show it to you a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and pause the camera and do several rows like I did with the other one so you can really see it. Okay, there we go. Well, you can see it a little bit. It's kind of hard, but there's your 2 knits. There's your knit. There's your pearl. There's your knit. There's your pearl. There's your knit. Let me do several more rows, and I'll come back and I'll show it to you. All right, I have about an inch of knit one pearl one. So I'm going to do one more row, just so I can show you again how I've done it. Knit 1, yarn over, or yarn between the needles, not yarn over. Pearl, yarn to the back, knit, yarn to the front, pearl, yarn to the back, knit, yarn to the front, pearl. So I just do it all the way across. So you can tell this one's a pearl because there's a bump there, and you can tell this one's a knit because it's smooth. The 1x1s, you can really distinguish them because it's just one. Sometimes if you have a multiple set of numbers, like a knit 4, pearl 2, you have to look a little closer because you'll have 4 of one and then 2 of another. Just about done. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bind off in rib, and the second half I will bind off in straight knit, so you can see what it looks like with the knit 1, pearl 1 if you bind off in plain knit. Three more. We're getting close. Now, since this should have been the scarf, like I said, you can do it in any yarns. You can do it in a plain yarn like I did here, which makes a neat scarf. It's just, even though it's about this wide if you just did a plain knit, but by doing the rib, you lose about half. So always remember, if you're going to do a knit 1, pearl 1, or knit 2, pearl 2 rib scarf, double the amount of cast on stitches. So instead of 20, you want to do 40. Because otherwise, instead of having this nice big wide one, you got this little teeny squirt of a one. So that's just one thing you have to watch out for when you're doing the rib stitch. Okay, let's bind off in rib. We knit the first one, bring the yarn to the front, purl the second one, take the yarn to the back and bind off. Take the first stitch over the second stitch. Now the next one is a knit, bind it off. Now the next one's a purl. See the bump? Bring the yarn to the front, purl it. Like I said, for me, I have to take the yarn to the back. But since the next stitch is a knit, it's already back there, so I don't have to move it back because I've already moved it. And then this one is then purl, bind off. Oh, I almost dropped my needle. this one's a purl. And that one's a knit. Yarn to the front because the next one's a purl. The next one's a purl. Now I'm going to just bind off the rest in knit. I'm not going to do the knit one, purl one. And that way you can see the difference. You can always bind off and knit all the way across a rib if you want to. It's entirely up to you. It's your design. It's your project. I just like mine to lay a little nicer, because usually these are the edges you see, like the end of a cuff or maybe the edge of a neckline, sometimes the edge of a button band, and you want to make sure it's as smooth or as even looking as possible. One more stitch, pull it up, cut it, put the tail through the loop, pull it tight. Okay, now you can see the difference. Okay, there's a knit one, purl one rib bind off. See how it's nice and smooth and it lays flat? And here's the bind off that's just straight knit. As you can see, you see this ridge across the top here, which are your bind off stitches. And it kind of stretches it out at the same time too, because it won't allow it to go in. On the back side, it's not as noticeable as it is on the front side, but still the same thing. It has caused this side to flare out. Or when you do this one, it didn't flare out. It stays nice and straight. So that's how you do your knit one, purl one to do this particular scarf. Now if you want to buy the pattern, it's called 5 Fashion Scarves. It is on my website, stitchniche.com, and all 5 patterns are in this one. Right now we've done the arrows ruffle and we've done the fuzzy rib. The next one will be the twisted knot, followed by the diagonal rib and the one that's done on the bias. I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe and hit notification so you know when my next video is out, and please share with your friends. I'm sure they would enjoy it, especially if they're avid knitters like we are.